Because one of the most basic fundamental teachings of our religion is respect for our elders, especially our parents. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And let me qualify that first. Allah didn't just expect, the minimum expectation in everything is what's called Islam. In other words, at least fulfill the minimum requirements and you'll be okay. At least do your 5 prayers. At least. That's a minimum requirement. At least give your zakah when you're eligible. That's a minimum requirement. At least fast the 30 days of Ramadan if you're capable. That's a minimum requirement. These are the requirements of Islam. If you're capable of performing Hajj, like so many are, may Allah accept it from them, that's a minimum requirement for those who are capable. But then if you can do your very, very best, like not the minimum, not the passing grade, but the very, very best, the A and the A+, that's called ihsan. That's not Islam, that is ihsan. But Allah, when it came to worshipping Him, He gave us a minimum standard of Islam. A minimum standard. And if you could do better, then good for you. But when it came to dealing with our parents, He set the minimum standard as ihsan. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّهُ. That's the minimum. Don't do shirk with Him. Don't worship anyone except Allah. That's the very least you can do with Allah. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. يعني على الأقل إحسان. At the very least, you have to do your best. There is no other requirement in this religion in which Allah makes you and me, expects from us our very best as the minimum you can do. Except with our parents. Except with our parents. And to take that even a step further, in Surah Al-An'am, Allah Azza wa Jal made a list of things that are haram. Now this is something that's mind-boggling. It's a list of things. أَتْلُ مَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْكُمْ رَبُّكُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ. Like, let me, the Prophet is told, recite to them a list of things that Allah has made, your master has made haram on you. Forbidden things. As a list of prohibitions, not doing shirk and other things. And in that list, Allah mentions, remarkably, and be the very best to your parents. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. In that ayah. Now that ayah isn't even about commands, it's about prohibitions. It's about things you're not supposed to do. So what's a command doing in the middle of don't, all these don'ts, and then one do? وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Why? That's a way of teaching that anything short of ihsan is actually falling under haram also. Anything short of that ihsan is also falling under haram. It's a remarkable thing that anything less than my very, very best is actually a serious sin before Allah when it comes to my parents. So I want to set that stage for you. This is not a new teaching. This is not something given to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This has been Islam all along. And this is the Islam also of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And I wanted to qualify what we're going to learn about Ibrahim alayhi salam today with that first. That he knows and he understands better than we ever will what it means to have ihsan with your parents. What it means to be the very, very best you can be with your parents. Now, having that in mind, I want you to listen to this conversation that Allah records in Surah Maryam. This is a conversation between a young man, Ibrahim alayhi salam, and his father. Okay, and I'm going to read through this translation quickly. I'm going to recite the ayat and translate them in flow, just to give you an idea of what's happening between this father and son. So the son speaks, Ibrahim alayhi salam speaks. إِذْ قَالَ لِأَبِيهِ. When he said to his father, Ya abati, my beloved father. Abati, the ta in Abba, that's as opposed to Ya abi, it's Ya abati. Ta tushir ila al-hub. It indicates love. So he's actually lovingly speaking to his father, or even throwing in like, Dad, I love you, kind of thing. That ta is encapsulating all of that. So he didn't just say Dad, or Father, or my dad. But my dad, I love you, my beloved father. There's a cushioned beginning. And then what does he say? He says, لِمَا تَعْبُدُ مَا لَا يَسْمُعُ وَلَا يُبْصِرُ وَلَا يُغْنِي عَنْكَ شَيْئًا. Why do you worship what can't hear? Why do you worship what can't see? Why do you worship something that can't benefit you in any possible way? Ya abati inni qad ja'ani min al-ilmi ma lam ya'tik. My beloved father, Dad, I love you. Knowledge has come to me for sure that has never come to you. I know stuff you've never known. He's saying this to his father. A young man is saying this to his father. I know things you've never known. And he says, فَاتَّبِعْنِي أَهْدِكَ صِرَاطًا سَوِيًّا. Then you follow me. I'll guide you to a straight, even way. In other words, you're going on a crooked way. Let me straighten you out, Dad. You need to follow me. You need to be listening to me. Ya abati la ta'bud ash-shaytan. that's no way to speak to your father. That's considered disrespectful. I started this khutbah by saying you have to have the very best behavior to your parents. And now we're seeing what seems at face value something to the opposite of what we just learned. And that too, this behavior exhibited by Ibrahim alayhi salam. How do we reconcile these two things? It's an important lesson to understand. This is why I wanted to take time to highlight this khutbah, because we are in this situation often. Maybe you find yourself in a family situation. Maybe it has to do with your parents. Maybe it has to do with your mother. Maybe it has to do with your father. But maybe it has to do with other members of your family, other elders, people you're supposed to show respect towards. Maybe it's going on with a spouse. And you're not able to, and they're doing something wrong. And you're not able to come out and say it because it comes across as disrespectful. The thing you have to appreciate about the Quran is two things, and I hope that as you leave today's khutbah, you remember these two things. There is what you say, and there's how you say it. Those are two different things. What you say and how you say it. Now, there's a way to say Assalamu alaikum, and you can say it with a smile, you can say it with a hug, you can say it respectfully, you can say it with a warm look on your face, and you can say Assalamu alaikum. And there's a way of saying the same words, which means still, peace be upon you, but you can say Assalamu alaikum. Same words. What you say is the same, but how you said it changed completely. Now, the thing is, just because you're saying the right words, just because you're speaking the truth, that's not actually the complete picture of communication. Communication is two things: what is said and how it is said. Those two things combined. The thing about this passage is a lot of times people read this and say, well, he spoke the truth, so we should speak the truth. Whenever something is going wrong, we should speak up and say the right thing. I agree, we should say the right thing, but that's only half the equation. You've just talked about what to say, but you haven't paid any attention to how to say it. The fact that when he speaks, he openly first declares his love for his father. Ya abati, it deserves attention. Allah did not put those words there by accident. These ayat could have been without Ya abati. إِذْ قَالَ لِأَبِيهِ لِمَ تَعْبُدُ الشَّيْطَانِ لِمَ تَعْبُدُ مَا لَا يَسْمَعُ وَلَا يُبْصِرُ. When he said to his father, why do you worship what can't see, what can't hear, what can't benefit you? The words could have been just like that, but the words Ya abati are placed there by Allah to tell us something. This is very important. You have to, on the one hand, stick to saying the right thing, no matter what. You can't compromise on that. At the same time, you can't compromise on the love, the respect, the humble tone, the concern, the genuineness with which you communicate that message. So those two things have to stay like pillars in a building. You cannot move them. You cannot compromise one of them or the other. So let me first show you how we compromise these two and how Ibrahim alayhi salam didn't compromise these two. What do? We do things like this. On the one hand, you say, I want to be respectful. I don't want to be disrespectful. Therefore, I won't even speak the truth. So you want to hold on to being kind and respectful, meaning how to be. And as a result of holding on to how to speak, you compromise what to speak. You don't want to touch it. Or the other extreme, you know what? I'm going to speak the haqq. I heard the khutbah today, and I'm going to go do some amr bil ma'roof and nahi anil munkar on my mother or my father or whoever else. I'm going to command the good and forbid the evil. And then you want to hold on to speaking the truth, but you forget all about the tone, the attitude, the gesture with which, the body language even, the way your eyes are going to be, the way your face is going to be, the way you're going to seat yourself. You're not going to be standing when they're sitting down and pointing down at them. You're not going to be raising your voice. Quran doesn't just teach us what to say. There's so much of the Quran dedicated to how to speak. How to speak. The father is giving advice to his son, Luqman is giving advice to his son, and he says, وَغْضُضْ مِنْ صَوْتِكَ, keep your voice low. إِنَّ أَنْكَرَ الْأَصْوَاتِ لَصَوْتُ الْحَمِيرِ. The ugliest of the voices is the braying of a donkey. Why did he say that? Why is that in the Quran? Because it's not just about what to say, it's how to say it. Allah will highlight for you would think Allah, when He criticizes disbelievers, He only criticizes the way they, what they said and what they did. But Allah will say, ثُمَّ النَّظَرْ ثُمَّ عَبَسَ وَبَصَرْ ثُمَّ أَدْبَرَ وَاسْتَكْبَرْ. He stared, he frowned. Allah criticizes the facial expressions of a disbeliever when they showed arrogance on their face. وَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ. Don't say uff to your parents, and uff in Arabic isn't just the words uff, it's angry look, the frustrated look, that's also uff. So on the one hand, we say, well, we have to be respectful, so we shouldn't say anything. And that means you hold on to how to be, but you compromise what to say. And on the other side, you say, you know what, I'm fired up today, I'm going to speak the truth. And you speak your truth, but you speak it in a very disrespectful way. And shaitan comes to both of these and says, on the one hand, to one group of people, shaitan comes and says, hey, you did a good job. You were respectful to your parents, you didn't say anything, and you shouldn't, because you have to be the best to your parents. Remember the first part of the khutbah before you fell asleep? That part. That's the important part. You were good to your parents. And the other group, shaitan comes and says, hey, you spoke the truth. Great job. You did some amr bil ma'roof today. You stood up for the truth. You followed the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Both of these are half the equation, and half of truth isn't the truth. And half of guidance isn't guidance. You have to hold on to both of these, and it's very, very difficult to do. And let me tell you why it's so difficult to do. First of all, it's very difficult to say something critical to those that we love. It's not easy, especially to someone who's elder, especially to someone who's sensitive. And there are people in our family that are very sensitive. You can imagine if you speak to them about certain sensitive things that they're doing wrong, some things that have to be brought up, they might get extremely angry. They might get extremely upset. They might even start crying. They might get, depressed. They might have very bad reactions. And you know them well enough to know that when you're going to say something, that you can already see how this is going to go. You can already see where this is heading. You're smart enough to know your family. So you know. And this is one of the things that's going to stop you from saying something. It's going to hold you back. This is, last week was about peer pressure. This is a different kind of pressure. To not stand by the truth. And it's not an easy thing to do that. But this has to be done. We cannot be afraid of the feelings of our loved ones if we're holding back from saying what we absolutely know to be the truth. And especially if we're going to do it in the most loving, kind, affectionate sort of way. So even something so harsh like, don't worship the devil. I'm afraid the punishment's going to come to you. He had to say some really harsh things, but he was saying it in the most loving of ways. And that leads me to the next problem. Let's just say that after this, and this is an important part of this problem. When we give somebody the truth, when you're going to speak the truth to somebody, your job is not to convince them otherwise, or your job is not, I can't believe I quoted the ayat, I quoted the hadith, I gave like this, I even practiced the speech ahead of time, and I gave this epic speech, and nothing changed. I gave a speech and nothing changed. Who are you? Who am I? When Nuh alayhi salam can preach to his people, he's a much better speaker than you and I. For 950 years and nobody listens. He doesn't get offended. How dare they not convert as soon as I spoke to them? I'm never going to speak to them again. You know what? I gave such an amazing bit of advice, and look at how it was ignored. I'm done. I'm walking away. No, you're not. Our job is to actually deliver this truth because we are humble before Allah. In any other conversation, if you're talking to somebody, they don't listen to what you have to say, they ignore you, you get offended, you get mad, your dignity kind of gets inflamed. Nobody likes being dismissed that way in conversation. But if that happens to you in the midst of this conversation, you and I forget something. The fact that we're having this conversation is an act of worship. This is something we're doing for Allah, like sajda, like salah. When you're having that conversation, it is an act of worship. In other words, the only one you're looking to please is Allah. And when you do something for the sake of Allah, an act of worship for the sake of Allah, you expect no returns from anyone else. You expect no positive results. You expect, well, if they like what I have to say, then I'll be happy. If they don't like what I have to say, then I'll be offended. It's not your place. Because He's the one who changes hearts, not you and me. Our job is to be the most respectful, kind, and courteous we can be, and be as honest and genuine as we can be. But at the same time, our job is not to be offended when they don't hear what we have to say, or they dismiss, or they get angry at us like we've committed a crime. And some people are very good at that. When you speak the truth with them, they turn it around and turn it into your crime. How can you say this to me? Who are you? Look at you. And they'll flip it over, like, I often talk about how Fir'aun flipped it over for Musa alayhi salam. I want you to hear what and inshallah not all of you, but at least some of you may be going through struggles like these, maybe not with your parents, but with someone else in your family or friends. But when you go through a struggle like this one, know that you're not alone. This is not a situation that's just unique to you. It's never happened before. The best people before Allah were put in situations like these. And Allah mentioned those situations so we can learn something from them, so we can understand how to navigate those situations. There's no way that these situations will disappear. If it was possible for these situations to be erased, then it would have been erased for people like Ibrahim alayhi salam. So we just have to learn to deal with these situations and develop the guidance and the strength to be able to cope with them in a healthy way. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us the ability to extract guidance correctly from His book and to live by that guidance. May Allah Azza wa Jal reward us for the patience that we show towards one another.